What if I told you, a war that ended almost 50 years ago still impacts us today? This isn't a tale from a dusty, forgotten book. This is about the Vietnam War, a defining chapter of the Cold War era. This was not just a conflict isolated in the distant lands of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. This was a proxy battle, a high-stakes chess match between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. It was a time when the world held its breath, a time when the shadow of war loomed large over the globe. The primary players on this stage were the United States Armed Forces, the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, the People's Army of Vietnam, and the National Front for the Liberation of South Vietnam. But, like all stories, ours too has a beginning. This one, however, started not with gunfire and explosions, but with a struggle against French colonial rule. So, how did this all begin? Let's delve into the origins of the Vietnam War. The seeds of the Vietnam War were sown long before the first shots were fired. This conflict didn't just spring up overnight, its roots can be traced back to the era of French colonial rule, when Vietnam was part of French Indochina, a collection of Southeast Asian territories under French control. For nearly 6 decades, from the late 19th century to the mid-20th century, the Vietnamese people lived under the yoke of French colonial rule. During this period, they were exposed to the oppressive policies of a foreign power that sought to exploit their land and resources. This was a time of hardship and struggle, but it was also a time of growing awareness and rising nationalism among the Vietnamese people. A spirit of resistance began to take shape, fueled by a strong sense of national identity and a burning desire for independence. This spirit found its voice in Ho Chi Minh, a charismatic leader who became the face of Vietnamese nationalism. Inspired by the principles of communism, Ho Chi Minh envisioned a Vietnam free from foreign control. In the aftermath of World War II, with the French weakened and the winds of change sweeping across the globe, the Vietnamese nationalists saw their opportunity. They declared their independence, triggering a violent response from the French who were unwilling to let go of their colonial possession. This ignited the First Indochina War, a brutal conflict that raged for 8 long years. But this was just the prelude. As the French were ultimately defeated at Dien Bien Phu, the country was divided into the communist North and anti-communist South, setting the stage for a larger conflict. The United States, fearing the spread of communism, stepped in to support the South. The Soviet Union and China, on the other hand, backed the North. Suddenly, Vietnam found itself at the center of a global power struggle, a pawn in the larger game of Cold War politics. And just like that, the stage was set for a war that would last for 2 decades. The seeds sown during the era of French colonial rule had grown into a full-blown conflict. The Vietnam War was about to begin, a war that would leave an indelible mark on the pages of history. The year is 1955 and the world watches as Vietnam descends into chaos. The Vietnam War, a conflict that would span 2 decades, was about to commence. This war, however, was not just about Vietnam, it was a stage in the global theater of the Cold War, a proxy battleground where the ideological titans of the United States and the Soviet Union clashed indirectly. The war ignited when the struggle against French colonial rule in Vietnam escalated beyond control. The Vietnamese yearned for their independence and freedom, yet this struggle was not merely a local affair. It soon drew the attention of the world's superpowers, transforming Vietnam into an international hotspot. The United States, fearing the spread of communism in Southeast Asia, plunged headfirst into the conflict. They allied themselves with South Vietnam, providing military support and aid. Their involvement was not purely altruistic, it was a strategic move, a piece in the larger chess game of the Cold War. Simultaneously, the Soviet Union and China, the champions of communism, backed North Vietnam, supplying them with the resources they needed to wage war. Thus, a nation's fight for independence transformed into a global standoff, with Vietnam caught in the crossfire. As the war escalated, the impact on the Vietnamese people was profound. Millions were displaced from their homes, their lives uprooted in the face of the advancing conflict. The human cost was staggering, with casualties estimated to range from nearly 1 million to 3 million Vietnamese. This figure does not even account for the numerous casualties among Cambodians, Laotians, and U.S. service members. The war was not just a political or ideological conflict, it was a human tragedy on an unimaginable scale. The United States Air Force's use of toxic herbicides, such as Agent Orange, added another layer of suffering. These chemicals wreaked havoc on the environment, poisoning the land and the people who relied on it. The scars of this war were not only physical but also ecological. But as the war raged on, so too did the resistance. In the face of adversity, the Vietnamese people fought back. The Vietnam War was not just a front between two superpowers, but a struggle of a nation striving to safeguard its sovereignty. Central to this struggle was the formation of two key Vietnamese organizations, the National Front for the Liberation of South Vietnam and the People's Army of Vietnam. The National Front, colloquially known as the Viet Cong, emerged as a guerrilla force operating in South Vietnam. They were primarily composed of South Vietnamese citizens who opposed the government and its alliance with the United States. Their intimate knowledge of the local terrain and their unconventional warfare tactics were a thorn in the side of the US and South Vietnamese forces. Parallelly, in the north, the People's Army of Vietnam, backed by the Soviet Union and China, was evolving into a formidable conventional military force. They were instrumental in resisting the US and South Vietnamese forces, using a blend of guerrilla warfare and large-scale operations. The tactics employed by these forces were as diverse as they were effective. Ambushes, booby traps, and tunnel systems turned the lush jungles and sprawling rice paddies of Vietnam into deadly battlefields. The Vietnamese resistance capitalized on their local knowledge and the element of surprise, often neutralizing the technological and numerical superiority of their adversaries. Perhaps the most iconic symbol of their resistance was the intricate network of tunnels at Cu Chi. These subterranean passageways, stretching for hundreds of miles, housed troops, facilitated communication and transport, and even included hospitals and living quarters. In the face of relentless aerial bombardment and ground assaults, these tunnels were a testament to Vietnamese resilience and ingenuity. The resistance was not without its costs. Civilians often found themselves in the crossfire, and the country's infrastructure and environment suffered tremendously. Yet the spirit of resistance remained unbroken. The Vietnamese people, fueled by a deep-seated desire for self-determination, continued their struggle against what they perceived as foreign aggression. Despite the odds, the resistance was unyielding, leading to a turning point in the war. The tenacity of the Vietnamese resistance, combined with the mounting costs of the war, began to shift global opinion, setting the stage for the eventual withdrawal of the United States, and a new chapter in the history of Vietnam. The year is 1975. The world watches as Saigon falls. A protracted conflict that spanned 2 decades, the Vietnam War, known by some as the Second Indochina War, finally reaches its climax. The fall of Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, marks the end of this brutal war, as the People's Army of Vietnam from the north takes control. This event leads to the reunification of North and South Vietnam, a significant geopolitical shift in Southeast Asia. But this war was not just about territory or political ideology. It was a war that exacted a steep human cost. Estimates of the Vietnamese casualties range from just under 1 million to a staggering 3 million lives lost. The impact extended beyond the borders of Vietnam, with significant casualties among Cambodians, Laotians, and US service members. The fallout from the war was enormous. The displacement of millions of refugees became a humanitarian crisis that the world had to grapple with. The US Air Force's use of toxic herbicides like Agent Orange caused significant environmental damage, the effects of which are still felt today. The war also had profound socio-political implications. It began as a struggle against French colonial rule, and escalated into a larger conflict with the involvement of the United States and other countries. It became a major conflict of the Cold War, a proxy war between the United States and the Soviet Union. The war may have ended, but its scars remain. This statement rings true as the aftermath of the war continues to shape the region. The legacy of the Vietnam War is a reminder of the devastating consequences of conflict and the profound impact it has on the people and the environment. Reflecting on this chapter of history, we are reminded of the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity, the courage of those who fought, and the enduring hope for peace and reconciliation in the aftermath of the war. The Vietnam War is a pivotal moment in history, a testament to the complexity of culture and the enduring quest for freedom and self-determination. The Vietnam War was a war. It was a lesson in history, a lesson that continues to unfold even today as we grapple with its aftermath. The scars of this conflict are not only in the minds of those who lived through it, but also the fabric of Vietnam's landscape. The war was a crucible of devastation, a testament to the destruction of human conflict. U.S. Air Force's use of herbicides, the infamous Agent Orange, wreaked havoc on Vietnam's lush greenery, turning it into a barren wasteland. These herbicides destroyed the flora, they seeped into the soil, contaminating the water and the food chain. Untold health issues that persist. But beyond the emotional cost, the Vietnam War shaped the nation's identity. It was a crucible that forged a new Vietnam, one that had flames of war, emerged, resilient, and determined. Today, the war serves as the country's strength and a testament to its ability to withstand adversity. A conflict that shaped a generation is to reverberate in our world today. Its legacy is a reminder of the cost of war, the resilience of spirit, and the power of a nation to survive and thrive. The Vietnam War is a story of resilience and the human cost of conflict. We've journeyed through provocation or the brutal onset of war. We've seen the fierce resistance, the war's bitter end, and its far-reaching aftermath. This was not just a war, but a struggle for identity, a clash of ideologies, and a testament to the human spirit. The lasting impact of this conflict still echoes today, in the hearts of people and the pages of history. If you're enjoying our videos, please consider supporting us by liking and subscribing. It truly makes a difference for us. Thank you.